This evening we are continuing our study on practicing thankfulness. This is what this series is on being thankful in every situation. And this evening we're going to look at 4 spiritual dangers of ingratitude. But before we get to those dangers, I want you to consider this. A homeowner once ignored a tiny drip under the kitchen sink. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't even noticeable unless you got down on your knees and looked for it. But over time, that slow drip soaked the cabinet, then the floorboards, then the subfloor. By the time he realized what had happened, the damage was catastrophic. Mold, rot, structural weakness, all from a drip he didn't think was worth paying attention to. Ingratitude works the same way. It doesn't usually start with a loud rebellion. It starts with, with a drip. We take blessings for granted. We assume we deserve more, fail to thank God, and become indifferent to His goodness. But the reality is that drip will rot the soul. It begins to rot the soul by producing pride. It hardens the heart, and eventually, like Romans 1 shows us, it leads to destructive consequences far beyond what we would ever imagine. Ingratitude is not a small leak. It's a slow disaster. And so this evening, we're going to look at the first 2 of those 4 dangers. The first danger is ingratitude produces destructive consequences. Now, you may be thinking, well, how can ingratitude produce destructive consequences? How can that be? Well, you'd be surprised by what ingratitude does. And there are reasons why it's destructive when you're ungrateful. Because the reality is that in your life, you're either giving thanks to God by practicing thankfulness in every moment, in all things, or you're intentionally not being grateful. You're being oblivious and indifferent, or you're taking things for granted. So the reality is you're practicing one or the other. You're either practicing ingratitude or you're practicing thankfulness and gratitude. So your life is oriented one way or the other. You're walking one path or the other. Because the reality is that when you practice ingratitude, the danger's coming. It's like a warning light that's on the dashboard. There's a reason why a light comes on a dashboard for a vehicle. Most of the time, very few times is it because it's something false going on. Those things do happen. But most of the time, it's there to warn you that something is going to happen. Whether it is low oil, low tire pressure, engine problems, one or the other. And when we are being ungrateful, this is the warning light, because the heart grows proud, it grows hard towards God, and that's what's going on in Romans chapter 1. There's a reason why we keep going back to this passage in our series. It's one of the passages we keep going back to. But Romans 1, 20 through 22 tells you and I, for since the creation of the world, His invisible attributes, His eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. For even though they knew God, they did not honor Him as God or give thanks, but they became futile in their speculations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools. And then Romans 1, 28 through 29. And just as they did not see fit to acknowledge God any longer, God gave them over to the depraved mind to do those things which are not proper, being filled with all unrighteousness. And then you get this long list. That's why Sam Crabtree warns about what happens with ingratitude. Ingratitude fosters many maladies, from bitterness to suicide, and it fastens your seatbelts to the following countercultural statement. Thanklessness lurks behind homosexuality, envy, murder, and even more. Romans 1 lists out those sins that many people would not even consider comes as a result of ingratitude. They wouldn't even think that they're even connected. But the reality is that ingratitude is not a minor problem. It's a major problem. It's a major sin. And then the reality is it's actually one of the root sins, along with unbelief and pride. Ingratitude is one of those root sins that produces ugly fruit. Because it's about that here rejecting God, it's rejecting God who's the giver of all good things. I mean, consider the sins that are listed in Romans chapter 1. Because God gives them over to worthless minds and unrighteousness. I mean, you have sodomy, homosexuality, wickedness, greed, evil, envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice, gossip, slanders, haters of God, insolent, arrogant, boastfuls, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, untrustworthy, unloving, unmerciful. And on top of it, as well as that, which was mentioned earlier in that chapter, is ingratitude, unthankfulness. They didn't give thanks and suppress the truth in unrighteousness. So that's why it can be easily said that ingratitude or thanklessness takes you further than you ever want to go. It's a downward, slippery slope. And it's going to take you further, and you're going to pay a heavy price with your life. And so we cannot be like the world. Do not be like the world who do not give God the proper thanks he's due. Because cannot stress enough that ingratitude lies at the root of so much sin. A heart that is actively thanking God, is going to be strengthened to stand against sin and temptation. And so that's why we have to guard our lives, guard our heart, guard our thought life. We have to filter everything, every thought we have to take captive and filter through God's Word, because we're going to be practicing one or the other. And so we have to be aware that because of that, ingratitude is a root sin. We have to guard our hearts. We have to be actively thanking God, and so that we are strengthened to stand against sin and temptation. Because listen to what Ephesians 5:3-4 tells you and I. But immorality or impurity or greed must not even be named among you, as is proper among saints. And there must be no filthiness, and silly talk, or coarse jesting, which are not fitting, but rather, at the end it says, giving of thanks. So put that away. Instead of giving into temptation and committing these evil deeds, we are to give thanks to God. Give thanks to God for everything. And what we do not see in the English is there's a play on words in the Greek between the words for giving thanks and the word for coarse jesting. The reason why. The word for coarse jesting involves turning what is good into evil by turning good words into evil words. While thanksgiving is turning your heart toward God with gratitude, grateful words. And this is the reason why there's a play, because these two words begin with the same two letters in Greek. The word for good. The Greek word for good is only two letters, but the reality is coarse jesting is corrupting what is good, while giving thanks celebrates what is good. And so that is what Paul's intentionally doing. Instead of twisting good things into evil, He's telling us to turn everything back to God in thanks. And so that's what's going on here. But that's not the only danger of ingratitude. There's another danger. Ingratitude produces wrong expectations. Not just has disastrous consequences, but wrong expectations. Sam Crabtree writes this: one reason we find it unnatural and difficult to feel grateful when suffering is that we tricked ourselves into a set of expectations that don't match God's. We think our expectations are perfectly understandable. That's why we have them. We think our expectations are perfect. Oh, we would never come right out and claim that we're always right, but at any given moment we think we're right. In fact, at any given moment we think we're at every given moment we think we're right. If we discover we're wrong, we change our minds and then once more think we're right. All of us do this all the time. See, we tend to have a set of expectations for how we think our lives should go. Then we think that God must operate according to those expectations. That list can include many things. This is not an exhaustive list, but some common examples would be how we think people should treat me, myself. How I think I should be treated by those around me. We may have expectation of when I should retire, or how much money I should make, or what job. The expectation that I want to work this job for the rest of my life. Or that I should not get sick, or the people I love should not get sick. They shouldn't get cancer, they shouldn't get dementia, they shouldn't get anything, these things. Or even what my spouse should do for me, or the list could go on and on. And we do that, when we do that, and then when things don't go according to the expectations, we get bent out of shape. Angry, bitter, vengeful, or even suicidal. And then we're thinking that God isn't treating me right, that God is not fair, God doesn't care. But the thing is that Sam Crabtree points out that we're really not getting bent out of shape, but revealing what shape our hearts are really already in. We're revealing the shape of our thoughts, our attitudes, our heart, and all that. And so the reality is that to cure that, we must submit our expectations to God by yielding to His plan for our lives. That's what you must do. Submit your expectations to God by yielding to His plan for your life. Novelist Ann Patchett said this: never be so focused on what you're looking for that you overlook the things that you actually find. I mean, I think that's wise words there. We can get so focused on what I think should be happening that I miss out on what's actually going on. And the reality is that we're going to miss what God is doing in our lives. We're going to miss what He's doing. We're going to miss the good things that God is doing when we're focused on what is going on. Or the things that we don't think, I should say, when we get focused on the things that we don't think should be happening. But we got to remember that God is working all things together for good. That's why we must submit our lives to His plan, His perfect plan. See, when you yield your expectations to God, you will see God for who He really is. All wise, all good, and loving. And that He is working it out for your good, your life. Romans 8:28, and we know that God causes all things to work together for good. To those who love God, to those who are called according to His purpose. You must believe that. If you continue to look at life through your set of expectations, you will miss out on what God is doing. When you complain that life is not going according to how you think it should, you're claiming at that moment you're wiser than God is, even though we might not admit it. We might not say those words out loud, but that's what's going on at that moment. And I like what Sam Crabtree writes. None of us live the life that we would plan. We live the life that God planned for us. And his plan is much better for us. So what we need to do is give thanks. Look at every little blessing, not just the big ones. Count your blessings just as a song that we sang, and you'll be surprised at what the Lord has done. I mean, consider in It's a Wonderful Life. Mr. Potter, who always wanted to close the building alone, sees his opportunity finally after all these years to bring false charges of embezzlement against George Bailey. All because Uncle Billy got so excited when he was trying to deposit the money that he also had the paper of his nephew that was in the military, that getting the awards, and he wanted to stick it to Mr. Potter, and accidentally handed Mr. Potter the money in that newspaper. And Mr. Potter, who's dishonest, kept that money. Didn't give it back, even though they were looking for it. And so while George was frantically searching for the money, he becomes angry and discontent. He gets angry at Uncle Billy. He hates the building alone, angry at his wife and children, even to the point of becoming suicidal. Eventually wishing he'd never been born. And then Clarence, the character who plays an angel, shows him that his life is not insignificant, and he really did have a wonderful life. That he helped so many people, that he really did have a wonderful life. And once he returns to his life, he's awakened to life blessings and is grateful and thankful. Thankful for the building alone, thankful for his wife and children, thankful for his car that he hit a tree with, thankful for his drafty house, wishes the entire town, including Mr. Potter, Merry Christmas, even saying about the possibility of going to jail on false charges. Isn't that wonderful? I'm going to jail. After Mr. Potter wished him a happy New Year's in jail. But why does he feel like that? Because he stopped thinking about what I deserve and looks at life's blessings. Now, I know you can't get your theology on angels and much about God from that movie, but there's a point to that how he changed his outlook and what happened. And I use that to illustrate that we got to look at not how we expected life to go, but looking at what God has done. Because the reality is what we deserve is hell. So anything we have from God is a blessing. And so respond with gratitude to God. I mean, consider a traveler who climbs a mountain before dawn to see the sunrise. He had seen pictures online, brilliant colors, breathtaking views, a perfect moment. He expected that sunrise. But when he reached the summit, clouds covered the horizon. He grows frustrated. He grew frustrated. He complained. He muttered that the whole trip was a waste. He even turned around to head back down. But as he walked away, another hiker called out, "Turn around, look behind you." He turned and saw the clouds glowing with gold and pink as the sun rose behind him, lighting up the entire valley. He had been so focused on the sunrise that he expected that he almost missed the sunrise that God actually gave him. And that's what false expectations do. The wrong expectations. They blind you to blessings. They make you angry at God. They convince you that He's failing you when He's actually blessing you in ways that you never expected or even anticipated. So what you had to do, and what I need to do, is surrender our expectations and give thanks. Notice I said surrender, not lower. A lot of times people tell you lower your expectations on things. That's not what we're doing. We're actually surrendering our expectations and trusting God with our lives. We give thanks. We see, you begin to look at what God is doing, how God is blessing. You see His wisdom. You see His goodness. You see His hand in all things. Gratitude turns you around so you can see what you have missed. However, if you continue to look at life based on your expectations, and you're in danger. And that leads to the third danger that ingratitude produces, which is an entitled attitude. But that is the one we will look at next week. That's the third danger, is an entitlement, an entitled attitude.